I'm the most upwardly mobile politician in history. I didn't make any stops along the way. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice, or 3 times, or 4 times. Headlines from the fake news. Now it will be to serve twice.
So this is likely the first in a series of videos I'll be making to document every instance where Trump socially primes his audience with the idea of serving a 3rd presidential term. I expect this to happen frequently throughout his 2nd term, especially during the rallies he so clearly enjoys. But before we dive in, if you enjoy this video and want to support the channel, don't forget to click the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Your support means a lot, and it also helps promote these progressive messages to the YouTube algorithm, which helps its amplification to reach even more viewers. You might be wondering, what is social priming, and why am I focusing on it here? Social priming refers to the psychological process in which exposure to certain social cues or stimuli influences subsequent thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, often without conscious awareness. This effect occurs because relevant mental representations or associations are activated automatically by the stimuli, shaping perceptions and actions. This phenomenon was outlined in the foundational paper published in American Psychologist in July of 1999 by Barg and Chartrand, titled The Unbearable Automaticity of Being. This definition reflects Barg and Chartrand's discussion of automatic and unconscious influences on behavior triggered by environmental stimuli. It ties their broader discussion of automaticity to the specific context of social cues and their effects, even if the term quote-unquote social priming isn't explicitly defined in their work. I'll include a download link to it in the description for all those insatiable truth seekers who are unsatisfied with my description, so they can validate it for themselves. So now that the definition is out of the way, let me explain how Trump's behavior in front of his crowds suggests he is psychologically manipulating them through techniques of social priming. I suggest that Trump is doing at least 3 things as he introduces the unconstitutional idea of a 3rd term for himself, which forsakes the 22nd Amendment that limits any one person from serving more than 2 4-year terms as president. He is gradually accustoming his followers to the idea of disregarding the 22nd Amendment, which limits the president to 2 terms. Second, he is gradually accustoming his followers to the idea of disregarding the 22nd Amendment, thereby abolishing the 2-term presidential limit. And third, he's practicing his delivery to perfect it for future rallies. What makes this strategy especially effective is how he seems to use methods similar to those of cult leaders to put his audience into a state of passivity and heightened suggestibility. Once in this state, they become primed to absorb and accept his ideas. Let's break this down. Techniques of cult influence. Number 1, repeated messaging. Repetition is a classic psychological tool. When Trump uses slogans, chants, or catchphrases repeatedly, they reduce resistance through familiarity. Over time, these ideas feel natural, even intuitive. Once his audience has been conditioned to his language, they associate these phrases with positive emotions, making them more receptive to whatever he ties to them, like the idea of a 3rd term. Number 2, group unity and emotional intensity. Rallies are designed to foster a sense of collective identity. Emotional stories, chants, and applause create an atmosphere where dissent feels socially or emotionally costly. Diane Benscoter, a former member of the Unification Church cult and founder of Antidote.ngo, even noted that Trump's tactics mirror those used by cults to create a sense of us versus them. In this emotionally charged state, his audience is more open to adopting ideas like a 3rd term. Number 3, undermining trust in external sources. By calling the media quote-unquote fake news and labeling critics as enemies, Trump encourages his followers to dismiss alternative viewpoints. This isolation from contradictory information ensures that his narrative is the only one they hear. In doing so, he primes them to accept his framing of reality without question. Number 4, charismatic authority. Trump's confidence and charisma act as psychological shortcuts for his followers. They defer to his authority, often bypassing critical evaluation of his claims. His ability to frame complex or controversial ideas simply makes them easier to accept without scrutiny. Number 5, repetition of ritualistic behaviors. Symbolic acts like chanting slogans, saluting, or wearing specific attire reinforce loyalty and diminish individuality. These rituals create a sense of belonging and identity tied directly to Trump and his ideas, further embedding his influence. Now I'm going to show you how Trump uses this state of heightened suggestibility produced by his cult leader methods for social priming the normalization of the outrageous blasphemy of forsaking the limitation of serving only 2 presidential terms. Leveraging suggestibility for social priming. Once his audience is in a heightened state of suggestibility, Trump uses social priming to subtly plant or reinforce ideas. For example, planting associative ideas. By tying the concept of a third term to feelings of patriotism or fear or external threats, Trump primes the crowd to associate it with positive emotions, even if they initially resist the notion. Trump used honor here when he said it will be the greatest honor of his life to serve as their president not once but twice, or 3 or 4 times, before laughing it off. Incremental introduction. Portraying a joking demeanor at the end of his subtle tactic reduces resistance. Repeated exposure makes the idea feel less shocking and more plausible over time. Reinforcing through emotion. Emotional appeals to fear and loyalty heighten suggestibility, ensuring that his followers internalize his framing of events and threats. Even if he says blatant measurable lies, the crowd accepts his narrative. Behavioral priming. Physical participation reinforces mental alignment, embedding the primed idea more deeply in the crowd's consciousness. By combining these techniques, Trump creates an environment where his audience is emotionally charged, socially unified, and highly suggestible. This state allows him to socially prime his receptive audience to accept controversial ideas like an unconstitutional third term for himself, paving the way for normalization and eventual acceptance, which is the final of the 4 steps of the ideological subversion of a nation. The first being the demoralization phase, which takes about 1 generation, about 15 to 20 years, then the destabilization phase, which was roughly 1 to 5 years, before the crisis stage, and finally normalization. Trump and MAGA have now shown countless instances that fit the tactics of these stages. With Trump jokingly introducing the idea of him staying in office for a 3rd term as president, he's demoralizing by introducing the force moving in the opposite direction from the basic American moral values and principles, that being no president should serve more than 2 terms per the 22nd Amendment, so that Americans already moving in an opposing direction to these morals and principles, every society has these groups, have themselves moved towards the point of collapsing their own nation through encouragement by other agents employing these tactics of ideological subversion to destroy the country. He is destabilizing the country by directly challenging the accepted institution of the maximum term limit for president, while ending his subtle maneuver in a humorous way to make the idea less shocking over time, to further both the destabilization of America and his consolidation on power. Remember that a nation undergoing these tactics of ideological subversion destabilize the country themselves by believing and promoting the blasphemous ideas introduced by Trump, which erodes the country from within on its path towards destruction. Finally, he is normalizing the idea of a Trump 3rd term through the use of techniques of cult leaders and social priming by putting the rallygoers into a state of heightened suggestibility and repeating the blasphemy of the institution that is the 2-term presidential term limit and promoting it to be superior to the constitutional truth, to familiarize the public for their eventual support of it. Remember, understanding these techniques is key to recognizing and resisting undue influence campaigns from foreign adversaries whose propaganda of ideological subversion, taken from the classic book The Art of War by ancient Chinese philosopher Sun Tzu, has never been more accessible in American history. America is an open society, at least it had been until Trump arrived, meaning information sent to us via our smartphones is not tightly regulated. We are hardly ever censored by the government about what source the information we consume comes from, leaving each of us responsible for what we and others believe about the country we live in. Trump and MAGA are moving us away from an open society into a closed one by censoring what information we are able to consume, such as their actions banning books, attacking those who speak out against their dear leader Trump, and undermining trust in institutions, among many others. It is up to us to help each other spot these techniques of ideological subversion, manipulation, hypnotic control, and others of the social priming persuasion being used on ourselves and our fellow Americans. To do this, it is essential to stay engaged in the digital and or physical communities you are comfortable with. If you truly want to help bring awareness to these strategies of psychological manipulation to your fellow American neighbor, it can simply be to click the like, subscribe, and alert bells on videos you like watching, like here on this one possibly. It could be reaching out to content creators, authors, and or individuals that inspire you or you feel could help you manifest the change you want to see in your own life as well as the lives in your communities. But most importantly, it is by staying vigilant in all of our communities, big and small, federal and state, county and district. All need our attention and solicitude. Anyone can inspire, especially those considered ordinary but who feel like a renegade. Renegades are the people with their own philosophies. They change the course of history. Everyday people like you and me. So until next time, stay vigilant, fellow freedom fighters.